You've spent months grinding on standard language apps. You step off the KTX at Busan Station, ready to order your first coffee in the wild. But the moment you reach a market stall, the Korean you memorized doesn't match the street. The rhythm is different, and the sentence endings you practiced are nowhere to be found. This is the divide between standard Seoul Korean and the regional Gyeongsang dialect, or Saturi. Mainstream apps teach the Seoul standard as if it's the only variety that exists, leaving a massive blind spot in your training. The problem isn't your ability to speak. Locals will understand your textbook phrases. The breakdown happens when they reply, and your listening comprehension suddenly hits a wall. Speaking standard Seoul Korean is a safe bet. It guarantees you'll be understood anywhere in the country. The dilemma for a traveler is resource allocation. Do you stick to the textbook, or do you risk confusing your foundational grammar to study regional variations?
To decide, we have to weigh the effort required to learn these regional features against their actual impact on your daily survival. Busan speech typically breaks standard comprehension in 3 specific categories: pitch accent, sentence endings, and social formality thresholds. Language learning before a trip is an investment of time. Misallocating that time can leave you isolated in the exact conversations you spent months preparing for. The first hurdle is pitch accent. Unlike the relatively flat tone of Seoul Korean, Busan uses a system where tonal shifts can change a word's meaning. These shifts create a musical rhythm that makes Busan speech sound like a completely different melodic system to a Seoul-trained ear. Training a non-tonal ear to recognize these shifts as grammatical information requires a significant amount of time and specialized immersion. The payoff for that effort is better comprehension in chaotic, loud environments, like a fish market, where picking up on sentence melody is the only way to stay in the conversation. However, attempting to speak with this pitch accent as a beginner often backfires, making your speech sound incredibly unnatural. On this scale, mimicking pitch accent is a poor investment for your speaking skills, but recognizing it exists is vital for your listening. Beyond the sound, the structural grammar changes. The polite yo endings used in almost every beginner sentence are frequently swapped in the South. You'll hear yay for statements, while questions often end in no or ga. This causes instant confusion for learners because ga is taught as a subject marker in Seoul. Hearing it at the end of a spoken sentence sounds like a complete grammatical error to the untrained ear. Trying to use these endings yourself is risky. Deploying them without the correct pitch accent sounds out of place and can jeopardize your baseline pronunciation. Looking at the chart, simply memorizing these endings for recognition is a fast, effective strategy. It allows you to immediately identify when a local is asking you a question versus making a statement. Then there are the complex social mechanics. Standard Korean daily life runs heavily on the middle tier of polite speech. In Busan's neighborhood shops and markets, that middle-tier standard often breaks down. Locals will often move from polite speech to casual banmal much earlier in a transaction than they would in the capital. While textbooks suggest early casual speech is presumptuous, in Busan it's a signal of neighborhood warmth. If you rely strictly on standard textbook formality rules, you risk misreading a friendly market vendor as being entirely disrespectful. Adapting to this social pacing costs nothing in terms of study time. You just have to decouple the textbook definition of casual from the idea of rude. This triage system helps you decide how to allocate your study hours before you land. For a short-term tourist focused on basic survival, the best strategy is to double down entirely on standard Seoul polite forms. You'll be understood every time, but you have to accept being identified as an outsider. For a long-term optimizer, the flowchart shifts. Speak standard Seoul for accuracy, but actively study Busan pitch accents for listening comprehension. This split strategy allows for seamless street-level navigation without sounding like an artificial app bot. The logistical problem for the optimizer is that most tools ignore regional dialects, leaving you without a way to train your ear for the street. Street Tongue was built to solve this, bridging the gap between textbook fluency and real-world comprehension. It provides AI pronunciation practice and scored feedback on regional dialects, vocabulary, and slang, focusing on the specific speech patterns used in local neighborhoods. Download the Street Tongue app via the link provided to start training for the environment you'll actually be in. What was your most jarring textbook versus street language moment? Share your experience in the comments.